every couple of weeks. And now I am indeed most pleased to introduce you to today's speaker, the senior United States Senator from Oregon, Senator Ron Wyden. Senator Wyden left a full basketball scholarship at UC Santa Barbara to go to Stanford and earn a BA. He returned to Oregon and graduated from the University of Oregon School of Law in 1974. He then started a seniors legal clinic and helped found the Oregon Gray Panthers. Indeed, Senator Wyden's success in providing legal services for Oregon's senior citizens and in organizing the Gray Panthers so fascinated and attracted Oregon voters that they elected him to Congress in 1980 and 8 times after that. In 1996, he was elected to fill an unexpired term in the United States Senate. In the Senate, Ron Wyden has remained committed to senior citizens by seeking to influence the modernization of Medicare through his role on the Senate Budget Committee. He is also a member of the Senate Committees for Commerce, Science and Transportation, Environment and Natural Resources, and Environment and Public Works, and he also participates in a special committee on aging. I believe people in Washington refer to that as a full plate. In short, he has little time for basketball. In 1997, he was named Senator of the Year by the National Association of Police Organizations. Senator Wyden left his wife and 2 children in Washington, and honors us today by coming to tell us about some of his experiences and reflections during his first year or so in the United States Senate. Please join me in welcoming Senator Ron Wyden.
Very much, and it's good to be home, and I guess right at the outset I probably ought to set the record straight on this matter of being the senior senator from the state of Oregon. I have been going to a number of these Democratic gatherings of both parties. And Senator Hollings has heard me introduced a number of times as the senior senator from Oregon. He's a terrific guy, very thoughtful, and he is his state's junior senator at the age of 76. Tom Thurmond is his senior senator. And at one of these gatherings, he got up and he said, "I've been here for more than 30 years. I've never been senior anything. Ron here, about as old as kids, already a senior senator. I must be the most senior junior in history." And I guess that makes me the most junior senior in history. And of course, we in Oregon don't take any of these kinds of things very seriously. Today, as advertised, I have been asked to talk about how we can lose our labels but keep our values. And I want everybody to know at the outset that despite this program description, you are not going to get a talk about how to get the best deal at the Nordstrom's rack store downtown. I wanted to explore for a minute about how we can get beyond whether our politics is headed to the right or to the left and shift the discussion to how we can move the government in the most sensible direction, forward, the direction that can most make a difference in the lives of real people. Now today, much of the discussion about public issues resembles the way boys in grade school chose a basketball team. Boys are either a shirt or a skin, and these choices determine how a young man perceives himself or is perceived by others. And a lot of our political debates are essentially of the shirts and skins variety, with competing teams, the liberals or the Democrats, conservatives or Republicans, and each camp follows a prescribed set of policy views and is often unwilling to let the facts get in the way of their orthodoxy. For example, in 1996, the United States Senate spent many hours debating legislation to increase the minimum wage, a major debate, and another major debate over legislation to reform the welfare system. Many of the conservatives said that if the minimum wage was raised to $5.15, economic ruination would be at hand. On the floor of the United States Senate, they said a man or a woman earning $5.15 an hour was getting too much. It was too much of a burden on the U.S. economy. Can you imagine living on $215 a week before taxes? And similarly, many liberals said that if the welfare system was changed with work requirements and time limits, Western civilization was pretty much going to come to an end. They said that somehow it was wrong to change a welfare system that's broken down, and they actually argued against policies that would make welfare recipients more independent and productive. It's clear to me that both the left and the right were wrong. A minimum wage of $5.15 an hour does not produce economic calamity. Oregon is one of the leaders in welfare reform, with our welfare rolls going down 1/3. So the question then becomes, why do issues become so oversimplified as they were last year on the floor of the United States Senate? Why is public debate so distorted around false choices offered by many on the left and many on the right? One reason is that the media and various interest groups find it convenient to use artificially contrived boxes. A second reason is that drive-by political attacks are easier to get on the 6 o'clock news than thoughtful and more complicated problem solving. And yes, it's pretty handy for risk-averse politicians as well, because these folks can just look at what their team, their party is doing, and then they can just quietly and safely fall in line. I saw this early in my service in the Senate when I was told that because I had won my Senate seat by, let's say, a little bit less than a landslide, and have to run again in 1998, that I ought to be avoiding controversial issues and contentious matters. The Oregonian, for example, in an article earlier this year, looked at every member of our delegation and said, Wyden probably will cast safe votes and champion popular issues. Now, in point of fact, I don't think Oregonians send you to the United States Senate to duck the tough ones. So I've spent much of the last 6 months dealing with two issues that are not exactly for the faint of heart politically: natural resources and Medicare. And for a couple of minutes, I'd like to touch briefly on each one of them. When I got to the United States Senate, I campaigned hard to be placed on both of the major natural resources committees, the Environment and Public Works Committee and the Energy and Natural Resources Committee. And I sought those assignments because I have come to feel that the old resources debate, where one side is for industry and one side is for the environment, shirts versus skins once more, I've come to feel that that debate is a loser. The fact is that under federal law, both sides have enough clout to block each other in federal court for about as long as the old-growth forests have been around. And as this lawyers' full employment program goes forward, not only are we failing to protect our land and our air and our water, but we are shortchanging communities and human economic needs as well. This is pretty well illustrated in the recent and cantankerous debate over the Forest Service budget for logging roads. Originally, one side proposed to virtually eliminate the Forest Service road budget and direct those monies to the deficit. That would have been bad news for the cause of protecting fish and rivers. The fact is that road maintenance can often be a very good environmental investment because road maintenance can help prevent erosion, can help prevent stream degradation, and it often can reduce the potential for the devastating landslides that we've seen across the West. In addition, by eliminating the road budget, you would dismantle court-approved forest land, destroy federal payments to timber-dependent counties, and make it hard for us to implement the Oregon Coho recovery plan. So while one side proposed eliminating the forest road budget, the other side's position was equally indefensible. They asked the Congress to vote for the status quo, and the fact is that if you have these roads, fragile soils or steep slopes, you can increase problems for communities and for environmental protection. In fact, recent landslides in the Pacific Northwest may have been the result of improperly planned road construction and timber harvest. The communities of Salem and Cottage Grove saw their public watersheds sending tons of sediment into their drinking water supplies during the floods of 1996, and there does seem to be a strong connection between these slides and the presence of an intensive road network on the federal lands in their watersheds. Now, the root of this whole debate was whether there ought to be any harvest on federal lands altogether. And some who want to halt all road building in our national forests were using this issue as a stalking horse for seeing all the harvesting come to an end. On the other side were a fair number of folks who never saw a timber road they didn't like. And I and other members of the United States Senate then had a choice between the status quo, which involves casting a vote of confidence for poor environmental practices, or eliminate the roads budget and killing more fish, damaging the watersheds, clobbering resource-dependent communities. I didn't think very much of either of these choices. I thought both of them missed the point in terms of what we need to do in the Pacific Northwest. So I sat down and made a list of all the ways that new road construction could harm the environment. Building roads on steep slopes, in urban watersheds, through the few remaining large and roadless areas. And I asked the Clinton administration to put together a plan, a concrete plan to address these legitimate and important environmental issues. And to strengthen our case, I got Senators Tom Daschle, my party's leader in the Senate, and Max Baucus, the ranking Democrat on the Environment Committee, to join me in sending letters so that we could make sure that we got the Clinton administration's attention. Isn't it? Let me tell you how it turned out. Because Senators Daschle and Baucus agreed with me, we even made some progress when it came to the final vote in the Senate. Senator Ryan offered an amendment that would make more modest reductions and not unravel the entire maintenance budget. I felt it wasn't a perfect amendment by any means, but I decided to vote for it to send a message to the administration that they ought to take seriously our request to change the way the Forest Roads program is managed. And the administration has listened. I met with the Secretary of Agriculture, Dan Glickman, at length last week, and this morning I received a letter from the Secretary announcing that he plans over the next year to move forward on devising environmental safeguards for the Forest Roads program in accord with my request. With this decision, with the decision by the Department of Agriculture, we'll be in a position to end the empty debate over eliminating the roads budget and start the difficult job of crafting a roads policy with science, not politics, at the center. And the bottom line for me is it just goes to show what you can get accomplished if you get beyond looking for bumper sticker solutions and look for real solutions that matter to people and to communities. Another issue where I have tried to get beyond the traditional orthodoxy has been Medicare. All of you know it's the fastest growing program in government, and we are headed, folks, for a demographic tsunami. 75 million baby boomers early in the next century. But at the beginning of this Congress, the most influential members of the Senate said this issue was simply too hot to handle. They introduced legislation to send the entire Medicare issue off to, guess what? Another commission. I said that setting up yet another commission was a prescription for inaction on this key issue, and I decided to break the ice with a comprehensive Medicare reform proposal. Tim Hibbs, our pollster, our distinguished pollster, told Oregonian that this was a very perilous course for me to take. Many of my colleagues told me privately they thought it was a good plan, but they weren't exactly tripping over themselves to embrace it publicly. I asked to testify at all of the major Senate committees that deal with the issue, finance, labor, and budget, and I made my case to liberals and conservatives alike. And I said, now is the time to get this program ready for the 21st century. If we move now to modernize Medicare, we can set in place these changes, get rid of the practices that Medicare uses, that the private sector tossed in the attic years ago, and we can be ready to have this program in shape for the demographic tsunami. And with that kind of argument, both liberals and conservatives began to see that in fact you can't even tackle the budget. You can't even address the budget unless you're willing to go after Medicare. And so our cause of reforming the Medicare program began to pick up bipartisan steam. Many of the leaders who originally said, well, let's just send this off to a commission, said, yes, we've got to tackle it now. The president got out and made it clear that even after all the commercials of the 1996 campaign, he knew that Medicare needed reform, and key Republican leaders as well accepted the argument for reform. The final budget and tax agreement included most of what I proposed back in the spring when everybody warned me to sit out. And the fact is that we are going to save more than $100 billion under this legislation in the next few years, while Oregon, particularly cost-effective health plans, are actually going to get more money because in the year past we have been penalized for doing a good job. Once again, cooperating for the greater good and putting results ahead of rhetoric gave me an opportunity to actually produce results on an important issue for people. I do want to make sure, I'm wrapping up, that I'm not misunderstood. A willingness to chart a new course, to take the best ideas and get beyond the shirts and skins and artificial divisions. That's not the same thing as an absence of principle. A passion for achievable results doesn't detract from a commitment to overarching goals. And I can tell you, I hold exactly the same beliefs that I had in the days when I was fighting for the Gray Panthers. I still believe that government is supposed to be about opportunity, about making sure that everybody has a fair chance, a fair shot. I still believe in compassion for those who are hurting and don't have advocates, don't have political action committees, and don't have clout. And I still believe that education needs to be like electricity, available whenever you need it throughout your life. Lily Wyden is 8 years old, brightest red hair on the planet. She isn't going to go to work somewhere when she's 21 and stay there for 45 years until somebody gives her a gold watch. She and all the other youngsters are going to be changing their jobs. They're going to be required to update their skills constantly. And we're going to have to look at education in a very different way in the years ahead. And finally, I'm just as much of an optimist as I was when I came to Oregon 26 years ago. I still believe Oregon's future was made in heaven, and it's almost as if we had some special chromosomes which gave Oregonians an added creativity gene so that our state could lead the country again and again to new solutions. What do you want to call this ideology? I've got to admit, I don't really know anymore, and I'm not exactly obsessed with finding a bumper sticker for it. Ultimately, you can call me what you like, but I hope that you'll call me if you think that our best shot is moving forward by focusing on people, not politics, long-term solutions, and not labels. To me, that's what public service is supposed to be all about. Thank you.
Don't go away, Ron. You're going to field the questions yourself.
Field the heat.
Field the heat, right. But I get the opportunity to ask you the first question. And I know that you're keenly aware of the growing rift that we're experiencing between the rural communities of the state and the Portland metropolitan area and the Willamette Valley. Many of those rural communities, as you know, are suffering from stagnant or declining economies and high unemployment rates, while the Portland metropolitan area and the Willamette Valley communities are experiencing unprecedented growth and prosperity. Some people call this the two Oregons. My question is this: what can you do as Oregon's senior senator, or should I say junior senior senator, to heal this rift, to help heal the rift, and to bring help to those rural resource-based economies so that they can share in some of this prosperity and growth that we're experiencing in the urban communities?
My hometown is Portland, and I love Portland. Everything about my life seemed to get better when I came to Portland. My free throw percentage went up. Portland is as good as it gets. I can tell you, I am not, however, a United States Senator from the state of Portland. I'm a United States Senator from the state of Oregon. And everything that I have tried to do, Dan, in my service in the Senate has been directed to trying to see if we could come up with ways to get at this urban and rural divide that you talk about. And let me mention just a few. When I took office in February of 1996, we looked and could find no evidence that in the history of Oregon there had never been a United States Senate office except in Portland and Salem. And it seems incredible, but we have not been able to find any evidence that other than those two cities were in offices. So I didn't think that was much of a way to say we're in this together. I've opened offices in LaGrande, in Medford, and Bend. That means that the rural congressional district, 2nd congressional district on my watch, has more offices and more rural representation than it's had, and it's my way of saying that rural folks are going to be at the table. That's number one. Second, I have followed through on our pledge to have open community meetings in every county in Oregon. I got to all 36 last year. Got only a couple to go this year. That's another way to make it clear that rural communities start, and just so that we put this in perspective, I'm going to have my first community meetings every year in Wheeler County in Fossil, so that they see that the city slicker comes to the smallest county first. And third, it seems to me that there are a number of issues that particularly address this question of how to strengthen the economy and quality of life in rural areas. And I put special effort into the transportation issue because that is so important in rural communities. The Senate is working on ICE legislation. That's the Washington Code for roads and surface transportation. Senator Smith and I have put that at the top of the list, the bipartisan list of items we have been working on together. And we got a very good bill out of the committee I sit on. The Senate Environment and Public Works Committee would, under their appropriation, give Oregon $70 million more than we have received in the past. We attacked this problem of being a donor state where we put more dollars into the pot than we get back. We have improved our relationship there. And also, at my request, a new program will be begun to try to look at innovative ways to deal with growth management and land use. A special grant program will be started, and because of our work in the land use area, I think we're ideally positioned to get a substantial part of those funds as well. So a combination of issues and direct service, it seems to me, is the best way to send the message that we are in this together. And whether it's Medicare reimbursement, and under my legislation, the rural communities do the best in terms of Medicare reform or transportation or telecommunications. What I have tried to do, Dan, is in effect have a prism that says, what's this going to mean for all corners of the state as we try to improve the quality of life for 3.2 million people who live in Oregon. Yeah.
Randy Strode, City Club member. Here you are, freshly arrived from Washington. I would imagine you didn't leave without a briefing on a very topical issue. What can you tell us about the Japanese container shipping issue?
It may have actually been resolved. I was interviewed outside, and it was sort of like the TV folks thought we ought to have one interview if it had been resolved and another just in case it hadn't been resolved. And my sense is if it's not resolved by the end of the day, what is clear is we will have to take strong action. These practices cannot be tolerated. And the question then becomes, what is the best course to embark on? Clearly, we ought to be looking at other approaches. Certainly, the question of slapping liens on these vessels is one approach, and trying to make sure that they are kept longer and retained so as to make sure that these funds are forthcoming is an approach. But I sit on the Senate Commerce Committee. We have jurisdiction over trade issues, and I can assure you if this isn't resolved, Monday morning will be at it. And the debate is not over whether strong action should be taken, because it will have to be. The debate is over what is the best way to go. And the stakes obviously are enormous for us in the Northwest, and 1 out of 8 jobs in Oregon depends on trades. So we want to make sure that we do this right.
Andrew Kaiser.
Wait, can I just say that I've got here on the left and on the right. I don't want this to become shirts and skins.
I'm Andrew Kaiser, a City Club member. I also work professionally in hospital finance management. My question on Medicare. It's commonly reported that a Medicare senior will consume half to 2/3 of their economic use of Medicare in the last 12 to 18 months of life. It's also been observed that now in this era of managed care, the managed care company has been very savvy at hiring, rather recruiting and enlisting the healthy, happy well, and avoiding the ill, the aged, etc. And they've been posted at raking very comfortable profits because they have been cleverly marketing towards the seniors, in which the government pays quite well. Are your reforms going to be able to alleviate this?
Well, I don't think there's any perfect answer for it. Clearly, we in Oregon have led the nation in terms of a system that does ensure quality and tries to keep the better features of HMOs and managed care without some of the downsides. Part of the reason we've been able to do it is we've been at it longer than most other parts of the country. And I am very concerned about some of these practices you see in the East, big money and wheeling and dealing and gag clauses and this kind of thing. So in my Medicare reform legislation that passed, we were able to get a number of additional consumer protections, prohibition on gag clauses, requirements in terms of appeal rights for seniors and the like when they're denied benefits. And it just seems to me that as we modernize the system and create more choices, and that is really what was at the heart of my bill and what was at the heart of what Congress did this session, we've got to put a focus on protecting consumer rights every step of the way. And it's not just gag clauses and appeal rights, but a lot of seniors try to get information about the success rate of their plan. The federal government hasn't even been willing to make available what's called disenrollment data to find out if people dislike the thing so much they're dropping out after a few months. So there's much more to do here, and consumer rights have been a big part of my efforts. Ray, just like Congress, you yield to your colleagues.
Thank you very much, Senator. I'm Ray Kalani. I happen to be at the against microphone, but I'm not against John Ford. You serve on the Environment and Transportation Committees, and I think that's a tremendous wedding. NEPA, the National Environmental Protection Act, has been quite good for the environment, and I think it should be left as it stands. It should not be tampered with. My question is, will you reconsider your support for an amendment to NEPA requirements in favor of transportation, mainly highway projects?
Ray, let me describe what is in the ICE bill, because there's been an awful lot of misinformation about what I have proposed here. What Ray is talking about are essentially the requirements, the environmental requirements that are part of transportation projects. It's kind of like you have two tracks, a transportation track where dollars are made available for transportation, and then you have an environmental track, what's called NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act. And what I have proposed, Ray, is not a change in NEPA at all. No change in the basic organic legislation. All I propose is let's make the two trains run down the track together so that we don't waste time and money in the process. And I know that on the internet and said, oh my goodness, what's going on here? Is he got NEPA? And when we explained it to them, they said, A, not only was it pretty good, but it sure was a lot better than anything they were talking about in the House, where they really were talking about changing underlying environmental policy. All I'm saying is let's get two trains running and not all this heavy lifting go on because of our local growth management, LCDC, and the like. And then we have to go through a whole lot, of federal requirements that are essentially duplicative. Let's do the job once right. Let me send it to you and you give me your opinion. Okay.
My name is Paul Milius. I'm a City Club member. I was interested to hear your comments about tinkering with the margins of this HMO-driven system that we're developing Medicare in this country. But the tinkering with regulations and who gets said what, who says what, and who can appeal what, begs the issue that we have some 30-35% of our population without any kind of medical insurance, which is the way we've chosen to run our healthcare system. And we have medical decisions being based on the bottom line of the insurance companies rather than on the medical needs of the population. When are we going to have serious debate and serious action on developing some sort of a national health plan that gives every American citizen access to the most expensive and the least widely distributed healthcare system that the world has ever seen? I mean, the Germans can do it, the English can do it, the Canadians can do it, the Swedes can do it. Why can't we?
It is a disgrace that we are the only Western industrialized nation that has not figured out how to do exactly what the questioner has talked about, which is to have a system that gets decent and affordable health care to every American. I will tell you that I think that Oregon, again, is on the way to showing the country how to do the job right. And I'm very pleased to be able to say that we are right on the cusp of being able to cover every child in our state, and we are on our way in Oregon to making sure that those who don't have coverage get access to the basic, essential health care services. As a result of Governor Kitzhaber's outstanding work on the Oregon Health Plan, the tobacco tax that was voted at the last election, the Kennedy Hatch additional tobacco tax that came about in the budget, and the possibility of a final settlement with the tobacco companies, Oregon will be in a position to be the first state in the country to cover every single child. Now, clearly, that is not all that needs to be done. I've been talking with the governor about some approaches that again build on some of the innovations that we have made in our state, particularly in terms of chronic care. And I will tell you, the debate is not about, is it urgent to get where you're talking about going? No question about it. The debate now is over how to get it done. I think the American people have been clear that when you're talking about 1/8 of the U.S. economy, which is healthcare, they want it done right. They want it done carefully. They want it done right. We have a governor who's put us out first in terms of healthcare reform. We need to build on that kind of progress. It's one of the reasons I've specialized in healthcare in the United States Congress, in both the House and the Senate. We're going to stay at it. We're going to stay at it every single day, until we get done what you're talking about.
I want to thank you for co-sponsoring the Morris Udall Parkinson's Research Act, and I have a question to ask you regarding that. I'm Nancy Lips of the City Club, but I know it did pass. It was included in the appropriations bill of the LHHS recently, but it was not included in the House bill. And what are the chances, despite the fact that 50,000 people a year get Parkinson's, what is the chance of the Morris Udall bill, Parkinson's bill, being included in the LHHS appropriations bill or in the NIH bill budget?
Well, I hope that it will be included. Both Senator Smith and I have been very supportive of this effort. John McCain, of course, the senator from Arizona, has been a lifelong friend of Morris Udall. So there are a lot of us who want to see it included. This is important research that needs to be done. And so many of these, so to get the sense that we're really right on the verge of some significant breakthroughs, particularly in the genetics of these diseases. So you keep putting the pressure on, and characters like me will try to back you up.
Thank you.
It's important work, and I want to see it funded.
Thank you.
John Wool, City Club member. Switching completely from the Measure 51 debate, since the 1994 elections, there's been a shirt and skins game going on international family planning, with family planning losing procedural votes but surviving in final votes. Do you have a solution between the shirts and skins for how to keep international family programs alive?
Well, you're talking about something that shouldn't be a shirts and skins debate. I mean, certainly in the debate about reproductive health, the whole question of abortion and the pro-choice position and the pro-life position has been contentious, and there are reasonable people on both sides, and my position is obviously well known. This should not be such an issue, however. If you're really anti-abortion, if you really want to discourage abortions in America and unintended pregnancies around the world, you ought to support family planning. It is the ideal program to avoid unintended pregnancies and abortion. That's the message we're trying to get across. So I wish I could tell you I had some kind of magical solution for it. But I can tell you, I heard Senator Smith on the floor of the Senate talk about why he was going to support family planning because it was a pro-life initiative. And I thought it was a fine speech and it hit the point.
John Leeper, City Club member. Senator, I appreciate your coming, spending your time with us, responding to our questions. My concern is you have spoken about Medicare. There seems to be another sacred cow, though, called Social Security. And I am just wondering what your thoughts on any revision of it would be, such as making Social Security means tested.
Well, question about Social Security and means testing, it's already means tested. Those who are more affluent pay taxes on their benefits. So there is already something of a means test today, and that's under current law and it's on the books now. The question that you ask, however, is a very important one, and that's the question of where our country is headed with Social Security. I just got named to a special budget committee task force to look at this, so I'll have a chance to give you more complete answers as we get into our work. But I'll tell you, I think it is a more difficult issue than Medicare. I want to give you an example. Shortly after the Social Security Commission came in with their recommendations, and one of the recommendations was largely to privatize Social Security and to allow it to be invested, the funds to be invested in the stock market. Alan Greenspan came to the Senate Budget Committee, and I asked him what he thought of that proposal. And I assumed that Alan Greenspan, being something of a markets man and a private sector leader in terms of these kinds of issues, would say, absolutely, let's send this change out and get it in place. And Alan Greenspan was very skeptical of it. Alan Greenspan said, not only has nobody thought of what it means for seniors and families and beneficiaries, nobody's even thought of what it means to market in terms of having all this money brought there. Now, there are two things that I think make sense for the future. One is we have got to end the unconscionable practice perpetrated by both political parties of using the Social Security surplus to cover the current operating expenses of the budget. I want to tell you exactly about my frustrations in this area, because it's something I've spent a lot of time on. There is a section of the Budget Enforcement Act. It's actually section 13301. I know it by heart because it's like only about 4 lines long. It says you cannot do this. You cannot use Social Security surplus for purposes of the current operating expenses of the budget and calculating the deficit. Both political parties do it. They do it because they don't want to make tough decisions with respect to, military spending boondoggles or rip-offs in health care or anything else. I mean, it basically insulates you from having to make tough decisions. So I go and have these town meetings across the state. I meet young people at these town meetings who say, Ron, I'm more likely to have a date with an extraterrestrial being than I am to get my Social Security check, and I want to see this changed. I want to see this changed. And I've actually looking at whether there aren't some legal avenues for changing this, because both political parties have done it, and it's wrong. I think that's the first thing that needs to be done with respect to Social Security reform. The second issue involves whether some of these options for promoting more private saving make some sense. Senator Kerry and others have proposed this. We're going to be having some hearings on that next year, and I think those are well worth examining. But Social Security is a different issue. The stakes are very high. We've got millions of Americans paying more in payroll taxes than are paying in income taxes, and yet that set of monies, which forms the Social Security surplus, is then used to cover current operating expenses. Baby boomers and others get an IOU in their Social Security future, and that needs to be addressed.
Arnold Kogan, member of the City Club. Last year, Senator, I chaired a City Club committee on billboard removal here in Portland, and we concluded our study to recommend the removal of over 800 billboards in the city. So far, not too many of those billboards have been removed. That committee continues to function today, and we appreciate the help and support you provided the committee and your staff in providing us with information. The question I had is that the Federal Highway Beautification Act, we know, is under consideration. There's a lot of billboards along the federal highways and freeways. Could you bring us up to date on what's happening with removal of some of those billboards, including along federal highways that are right here inside the city of Portland?
Arnold, I've been supportive of those kinds of efforts and certainly plan to be in the future. I don't know of any particular piece of legislation that is on a fast track right now in the Senate. In terms of the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee, the two bills that we are spending the bulk of our time on have been the Endangered Species Act and Superfund. Let's try to run down for you where this is with respect to the beautification legislation. And I've been supportive in the past, and I'm going to continue to be.
Thank you.
Bill Savage, City Club member. Okay. I'd be interested in your comments, Ron, on the difference between serving in the House and serving in the Senate.
They're very different institutions, and there are differences that are easy to explain. There are differences that are difficult to explain. For example, in the House, it is majority rule all the time. In the United States Senate, it is essentially minority rule. Minority rule unless somebody has 60 votes. If you've got 6 votes, essentially you can get a cloture and cut things off. So the minority has much more dramatic kind of sway in terms of the ability to influence matters in the Senate. The second is that in the House, unless you're on the committee that is taking the lead on a particular issue, it is very, very difficult to get good ideas out on the floor. Not impossible, but very, very difficult. And that is a source of frustration to a lot of House members, and certainly it was to me. In the Senate, you essentially have, in many instances, a committee of 100, and that every senator has a chance to bring important issues to the full Senate floor, and so you have a lot of opportunities that you wouldn't normally have in the House. I will tell you that I think that a number of the Senate rules are particularly archaic, and I have been working hard to try to change them. For example, it is possible for one member of the United States Senate unilaterally to block a piece of legislation or a nomination from coming to the floor of the Senate, and they can do it all in secret. They can do it completely in secret. And I just think that's the kind of practice that breeds cynicism and skepticism about government. Senator Grassley, Republican senator of Iowa, and I have teamed up to get it included in Senate legislation. Now we are faced with whether there will be a secret effort to block our plan to end secrecy. But it's the kind of practice that I think really is outdated. We saw the same thing with staff. We have very talented staff who works in the energy field. Mary Shea, she is blind. She was barred from the Senate floor and was not allowed to bring her guidebook on the Senate floor. And we said that's not in line with the requirements of the Americans for Disabilities Act, and we're able to get that changed well. So I think that there have been a number of these rules that I had thought were going to be problems when I came over from the House, but cumbersome and I thought anti-democratic when I actually got to see him in person. More than anything, please know that I and my office feel that the City Club is always a source, always an engine of good ideas and creative policy recommendations. Our door is open to you, and as in the past, we hope to be working with you often in the days ahead. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Wyden, for doing such a wonderful job of answering the questions from our members. I have long wondered why it has taken women so long to become prominent in sports. And I think understanding this shirts and skin thing explains quite a bit. Please do sign our guest book as you leave, and if you are a guest today, we encourage you to join the City Club. We stand adjourned. Thank you.